I am so indebted to Patsy, and you probably don't know the story. She was one of the most beautiful co-eds that's ever been on this campus. And I think my greatest recruiting coup was getting her to marry me. And believe me, I had to chase her all over this campus. But we've had a lot of good times together, and we'll continue to have good times. And to my sons, Sean, and Scott, and Steve, I hope you know your dad is proud of each of you and the paths that you've taken in life. I love you guys very much, and I hope you know I'll always be there to help you in any way.
When he sent it to me by text, a prominent part of that was the biggest disappointment is my mom is not here to share that because she played such a huge role. I think Sean called her the rock of the family, and I think Scott would agree with that. And that's why I played. I extended it there to the message that he gave to his sons. That came from his retirement speech, um, Coach Eddie Sutton, and Scott joins us now. And Scott, one of my favorite pictures. I've been meaning to tell you this if I haven't told you before, and if I have, you'll just have to put up with me. One of my favorite pictures is from an ORU NCAA appearance when you were head coach, and it's from the practice day when you go to the arena, you go to the site, and you have that hour long. I don't know if anybody. It's a practice. It's a shoot around, and not much gets done. Almost every team goes and finds someplace else to, and it's open to the public. But you're in a ORU warm up, and you're kind of leaning against the press table there, and your dad's sitting there in a suit, and his look on his face is the same kind of look I remember on those same days when it was his team out on the floor practicing. It's one of my favorite pictures of you and your dad.
Yeah, first of all, brought some tears to my eyes with that audio clip. That was I hadn't heard that in a long time, and to be honest, I hadn't heard my father's voice that strong
Yeah.
in several years. So that was pretty special to hear. Yeah, I think the NCAA tournament was in Denver. Him and my mom had flown up and was there to support me, and yeah, he always kind of sat there on the scores table and kind of held court. Everybody wanted to hear him because he had such great stories. And there's obviously we were elated with the news over the weekend, but it's a little bit bittersweet. And we talked about, and you talked about my mom, and I know Sean has, and I sent that text to you, and she was such a huge part of what he was able to accomplish as a coach. He always said she was his number one assistant, and didn't mean that she was out there drawing plays or recruiting, but she certainly played a big role. And you talk to any of the former players that played for him, she was there, after games to give hugs, to give encouragement, to pick him back up after my dad had kind of, those practices where he's got on him. And, one thing my dad always did, and he was terrific at it, was he'd bring in a kid, and maybe they're a little arrogant or cocky or had some deficiencies, and he'd break them down. And it was hard on a lot of players, but he'd build them back up, into the type of player he wanted them to be, and the type of player that he thought they could be. And my mom was a big part of that. So it's sad that she's not here to enjoy this with us. But the other thing is, I so wish my father could communicate better right now, because I think I know this means so much to him. Being the historian of the game, he always understood how special the Naismith Hall of Fame was, and to be included, I know he is so overjoyed and proud, not only himself but his former teammate or former assistant coaches, players. The thing we'll miss out on, Robert, and you know this, is he would have given an unbelievable speech, and he would have stood up there and told great stories and thanked all the former players and coaches. And that's something that we'll miss out on as fans and people who love him.
Well, and again, I shared this actually with your brother. He texted me yesterday because in all that was going on, I'd asked him for a quote just like I did you, and he, everybody had a lot going on with that this weekend. I know you guys were getting contacted by people left and right. Well, Sean reached out yesterday, and I don't, I just text back to him. I said, the two greatest coaches, and when I say that, not just great because of accomplishments, but great because I learned. I learned a lot. The two coaches I've covered that I've learned the most from are your dad and Gary Ward. And Sean texts back said, every time I was around Coach Ward, I learned something, and I wished I'd been around him more. And so Sean could kind of appreciate. I thought those two guys were kind of cut from the same cloth, kind of in my mind, John Wayne type images as a coach. Bigger. Their stature was bigger than their physical, presence. But I did want to ask. I wanted to ask you a question that I don't think I've ever asked. And I don't think I've ever asked Sean either. Guys that are talented in sports, have choices, and I know Sean had choices, and I know you had choices. And some sons play for their fathers. Some sons say, I think I'll go over here and play for somebody else because they've played in a way they played for their dad since they were born because that's the household they're in. You get your parent coaches. Your parents are coaches. And I always wanted to ask you and Sean. I never have. What made you want to play for your dad? Because I know it couldn't have. At times, it had to be tough.
Well, it was a lot tougher on Sean, Robert. Sean was a little bit older, and he was a part of that, very difficult, really just 1 year at Kentucky. Although Sean, Kentucky fans are different. They're some of the best fans in the country because they love the Wildcats, but they can, they scrutinize everything, and it's hard to play there at any time. But when you're a coach's son, it's very difficult. But I think my dad learned a lot those first couple of years in coaching Sean, so he wasn't nearly as hard on me as he probably was on Sean those first couple of years. But to answer your question, I mean, gosh, he was our hero, Robert, growing up. He's a guy that from the time we could remember, we were watching him coach and watching the guy thousands of practices, and he wanted us to be a part of it. My mom wanted us to see what he did and how hard he worked, and not that we'd be coaches one day because they certainly didn't want us to go in that direction, but they wanted us to be a part, and that's one way we could still be around him, and we loved it. So it just, I didn't dream of playing for him, especially when he was at Kentucky. But when he got the Oklahoma State job and Sean followed, it truly was a dream come true, and it was the best decision. And I think Sean would say this, the best decision that we could possibly make. And we wanted to be a part of those teams and help in any small way. Sean had helped a lot more than I did on the court, but to try to get to a Final Four or maybe finally win a national championship for him, we couldn't accomplish that, but we loved every second of every minute of being a part of his program. So looking back, I wouldn't have it any other way. And I tell coaches and kids, it's one of the best decisions, or the best decision I made as far as athletics, was to be able to spend every single day with him and be a part of his program.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I say it's tough, but it's also, like you just said, it's memories of a lifetime because not just is he your dad, but I mean, when you look to your dad and your college coach all wrapped up into one, because both are influential individuals on any kid. Your dad always will be, and your college coach always will be. I mean, I mean, I didn't play hardly at all, and only 1 year with Jim Stanley, and uh, you know, I learned a lot from Jim Stanley, and um, you know, was so glad that I was able to go see him in Arizona before he passed, and so yeah, and I see his son Mark, who played for him here in Edmond a lot. So I think that is truly something that's special for guys who had a dad. It was a coach, and they were able to play for him as well. So
And
the other thing,
sorry,
oh, go ahead.
I was
No,
going
go
to
ahead.
say, the thing that he did so well with us, and it probably had a lot to do with my mom, but he could separate being a coach from being a dad. When we were off the floor, we were at dinner, whether it's at a restaurant or, we went home for whether it was family dinner or Thanksgiving or Christmas, we didn't talk. He'd never bring what happened on the practice floor or a game to home. And, we'd sit around and my mom would not let us talk much about basketball. It was about family. And so they did a great job of that. He did a terrific job of separating being our coach from being our dad.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and this was kind of the gist of my story on Saturday, because fortunately the news, I think Bill Haston and the Tulsa World broke it, and it got out through everybody. John Holcomb was able to confirm it, and so everybody had a story that it was happening on Friday. So on Saturday with the announcement, you kind of were able to go a direction, and my direction was that your dad belonged in the Hall of Fame as much for his influence as for his basketball accomplishments. And the things that always amazed me were, the way and you brought up players breaking them down and bringing them back. And I think sometimes he broke guys down, not just on the basketball floor, but from a character standpoint, and help them build greater character. And I talked to Doug Gottlieb on Saturday, and I think Doug is a really good example. And he was hard on Doug. But when,
Yep.
We all know Doug's fierce loyalty to him now. Doug was one of and Doug has a big voice in sportscasting, and so he was an example. But his letter writing, I knew from talking to people, he wrote letters to people he didn't even know, and
Yeah.
would send them something, a little gift, or I know he sent some money to people, and a good example is my son Zach. I don't know how he knew. Maybe he heard from somebody in the athletic department. Zach's just a little kid, little leaguer, and he got hit in a baseball game right on the elbow by a kid from Moore, Oklahoma, that had a pretty good fastball at that age. What cracked his elbow, and he missed the rest of the little league season. A week after it happened, here's a little box from OSU basketball. It's a T-shirt and Coach Sutton's letter telling Zach to get well soon. I'm like, what the heck? I mean, he did that all the time for people.
Yeah, I wish I was more like him in that way, because it's pretty amazing and I've gotten so many emails and people have stopped me, and this is not just over the weekend, but the last several years, that how he's touched them in different ways, whether it was a handwritten letter, and a lot of times, like you said, he wrote so many letters to people, or taking time to talk to a 10-year-old boy and make him feel special. And I think a great compliment. I got a lot of texts and emails, and I saw some stuff on social media from guys that didn't play for him. The guys that played down the road in Norman. I know Rinzai Stone put out something I thought was really neat, a handwritten note that he'd sent to Rinzai after him and Sean had made a home visit. And I got a really nice email from Ryan Miner, who, my dad and Sean tried to recruit so hard to get to come to Oklahoma State. And yeah, he touched people in so many different ways. And going back to, you talked about Doug, but being so loyal, all his players, because they understood that he taught them so much more than the game of basketball. He taught them about life and taught them life lessons. And he always said that, and he got that from Mr. Iba, that, sports and athletics and, in our case, basketball teaches you about life. And, one of the great stories that Victor Williams tells, I think Victor was a lot like Doug and kind of a whipping boy, but he was hard on him.
Oh, yeah.
But Victor got in got some parking fines during his first year in Stillwater, and my dad, he tells a story. My dad told him, "Hey, you go get your car. You're going to drive it out to my house, and it's just going to stay parked there for the whole semester, because you're not getting any more parking tickets." And he did. And Victor tells that story, and so but you look at Tony Allens and Desmonds. They both would tell you how just without him, they could not have gone on and had the type of careers. A guy like Darrell Walker, who Oklahoma State fans probably don't know much about, but Darrell was an unbelievable player in the early 80s at Arkansas, and this guy went on and had a long NBA career. Coach was a head coach in the NBA. Now is a head coach at UALR over in Little Rock, and he got in the car Friday morning, knew that we were going to get the phone call Friday afternoon, without knowing that he was going to get in, but he just wanted to be there with my dad in case he got in, and Darrell was. And Darrell tell people that my dad and mom saved his life. Darrell came from a tough background in Chicago, and he didn't like school, and he's one of those guys that my dad had to break down and build back up, and he swears by him and my mom, and so it's pretty cool to hear those type of stories.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, I remember the first time I saw your dad coach. I was a high school kid in Dallas, and actually one of my friends at school, Sue Davis, her dad Dick Davis, was the AD at SMU, and so we'd go to a lot of SMU basketball games at Moody, and which is again another one of the great places in the country to watch a basketball game. And it was fun to watch your dad come in there with Arkansas and coach against SMU, and Dallas was kind of a hub back then. I mean, it still is a hub. It's even a bigger hub now, but the crowds would be crazy, and a lot of Arkansas alumni in Dallas, and so it was always fun to go catch your dad. And I think I saw maybe 2 or 3 games where he coached at Moody Coliseum against SMU, and then to have a chance as a professional, sportscaster when I was at Channel 4, and to have the chance to cover Coach Sutton's teams at Oklahoma State. It's truly one of the highlights of my career. So just wanted you to know that.
Well, I appreciate that, Robert, and you've meant so much to Oklahoma State athletics, and I know my dad always cherished his time working with you, and he loved Oklahoma State.
Oh yeah.
He was so proud of being able to come back, and proud of and so thrilled to have Mr. Iba around those first couple of years to see them kind of get the program back on track, and so something that OSU special to him, and obviously special to all of us. Stillwater and OSU are so dear to us. It's where he met my mom. It's where Sean met Trina. It's where I met Kim. So it'll always be home, and it'll always be special to us.
Well, and again, to see the look on Mr. Iba's face when he introduced your dad back as head coach, and then also OSU was at a tough time. I mean, there's no doubt. A lot of things have gone well since, but when you talk about turning the tide from probation in football and all the difficulties, your dad kept Oklahoma State athletics alive and pumped blood into it and got it going again. Not just the basketball, but it brought. He's responsible for bringing that whole thing to life that is at a fruition right now. Hey, last thing before we let you go, I know we had Trey on earlier with Jordan Woodruff, and he talked about the basketball team got together on a Zoom conference this morning. How are you? How are your family? How are all the guys handling this? Because I think we truly are kind of experiencing a Groundhog Day experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's obviously it's different for everybody. It's challenging. It's challenging for everybody out there listening, everybody in the world. We just have to keep doing what the experts and the medical people say, and keep our distance, and try to slow the spread and lower the curve, and hopefully we'll get back to some sort of normalcy soon, sometime this summer. I'm hoping for, but yeah, it's been hard. Recruiting's so different. This time of year, we're here in a few weeks. We normally going out and watching sophomores and juniors in their AAU events. This is the time of year where we'd be having kids on campus for official visits, and obviously all that is not happening. So we've had to kind of get creative a little bit with recruiting and using technology, and doing some virtual tours of our facilities for some kids. But it is what it is. Everybody's in the same boat. No one has an advantage, so we just got to get through this. The one thing I'll say is, personally, I'd much rather, and obviously pray for all those that this is affected, and not just with the disease, but with the the businesses and the economy. I know it's hurting a lot of people right now, but to be able to sit back and spend time with family, and do some things as a family we haven't done in a long time, and we've eaten at home and had family meals more than we probably had in the last 5 years. So to have everybody under the same roof has been pretty cool and pretty nice.
Well, again, congratulations to the entire family, and really, congratulations to all Oklahoma State people, because I think a lot of people had a hand in this, whether they were just hoping for it and praying for it, or whether they were cheering for those teams back in the day, and all the messages everybody's done on social media. I think it all helped, and I think it's all good. So I know hopefully August 29th will get here, and your dad will be in good shape, like you guys said over the weekend, and it won't be pushed back. And what a cool weekend with the people that are going to be involved in this Hall of Fame class. So I thought it was kind of cool, even a rival like Kim Mulkey on the women's side, because we all like to see her get beat, but man, she's been awesome as a coach. So I think it's a great class.
Oh yeah, one of the best, and three of the best NBA players ever, one of the best WNBA players, and obviously Coach Mulkey and what she's done at Baylor, and Rudy Tomjanovich, who's two NBA championships. So yeah, it's a cool class to go in with, and hopefully, like you said, we can have that ceremony at the end of August. It'll be neat to see a lot of people. I know my daughters are fired up. They think for some reason they think Michael Jordan will be there because of Kobe, but we'll see. But hopefully that'll go on, and if it doesn't, then I'm sure they'll have that ceremony sometime.
Hey Scott, I appreciate it so much, and again, best to your family. I can't wait to when we can all unpracticed social distancing and see each other again.
Absolutely, Robert. Thanks for having me on. You guys stay safe.
All right. Scott Sutton, Cowboy basketball assistant, and again, successful head coach in his own right, and celebrating like everybody is the fact that his dad is going into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame.